Good evening. Welcome to this evening's session. My name is Josephine and I'm a Student Recruitment Officer at Melbourne Business School. Tonight's session will be on entrepreneurship at Melbourne. Before I go on, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners on the land on which the Parkville campus stands and also where I'm currently located, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. In a moment, I'll be joined by Professor Gerda Gemscher, the Program Director of the Master of Entrepreneurship, to present Melbourne Business School's entrepreneurship offerings. Later in the session, I will be joined by Master of Entrepreneurship alumni, Rosie Downey, Sanjita Melchandani, and Arjun Agwal, for a Q&A panel where they will give their insights into how entrepreneurship and studying entrepreneurship at Melbourne has prepared them for their careers. Now, we also have a panel or a group of some staff that are off camera that are ready to answer your questions. So please feel free to pose any questions you may have about the Master of Entrepreneurship, or if you have any questions you'd like to pose to our panel. Professor Gerda Gemscher is the Chair of Entrepreneurship at Melbourne Business School and a full Professor of Entrepreneurship. She received her PhD in Management at the Rotterdam School of Management and has been a visiting scholar in leading research universities in North America, including the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and the Saunders School of Business with the University of British Columbia. She has published extensively on the topics of creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, with an upcoming book to be released by Stanford University Press, written together with the senior executive of 3M, titled Design Leadership Ignited: Elevating Design at Scale. As the Program Director of the Master of Entrepreneurship, she is well placed to introduce our offerings and how they will develop an entrepreneurial mindset within a new venture or an established organisation. Welcome.
Thank you, Josephine. Much appreciated. Hello, everybody who has joined us virtually. Thank you for joining and showing interest in entrepreneurship's education at the University of Melbourne. So what I wanted to do now in 10-15 minutes is tell you a little bit more about 3 graduate courses on entrepreneurship that we have on offer. One is the Graduate Certificate of Entrepreneurship, which is consists of 4 subjects totaling 50 points. The second offering is the Master of Entrepreneurship Enhanced, we call it. That's 150 points, consists of 12 subjects. And the third offering is the Master of Entrepreneurship of 100 points, which consists of 8 subjects. The first 2 offerings that you see here, they start in semester 2 of this year, and the 100-point master starts in semester 1 of 2023. And these are offerings that did not exist last year. In particularly, the Master of Entrepreneurship 100 points and the Graduate Certificate are new offerings. So you all show an interest in entrepreneurship, right? Because that's why you're here listening to us, explaining about what it is that we teach you. And so you might also have a favorite entrepreneur. Here you see some of my favorite entrepreneurs. Now, some you might know, Elon Musk, of course, is somebody who is a serial entrepreneur even. He has not only created and is leading Tesla and has as such kind of upended the whole automobile industry, but he has also created SpaceX. He has also created the so-called Boring Company and actually has created some other companies as well. So he is somebody who really has entrepreneurship within his veins. You also see somebody relatively young and very successful, which is Melanie Perkins. She's from Australia, originally from Perth, and she has created Canva. Maybe you have used Canva in order to design a website or a poster or greeting cards, right? Because that's the offering that she proposes to the audience. And she's very successful with Canva, actually. Then you see two gentlemen sitting there. They are also from Australia. They are Mike and Scott, and they created Atlassian. And Atlassian is a B2B software company that creates collaborative software that facilitates virtual collaboration. And of course, that's something we all need in have been needing the last couple of years. Then the last example is a lady called Whitney. Whitney is not from Australia, but she's one of the youngest billionaires that exist. And what she created was Bumble. So Bumble is, the online dating platform, which has a bit of a feministic approach to it. So these are 4 very successful entrepreneurs. And during our different subjects, we will analyze what they have done. We will also, of course, discuss other types of entrepreneurs. And in time, I'm curious to hear who actually will be your favorite entrepreneurs, right? That you might want to emulate or learn from. So the grad courses that we offer, those 3 that I showed you, with those grad courses, we want to provide you a theoretical foundation and a set of practical tools and techniques that will help you manage entrepreneurial activities. And those entrepreneurial activities, they can take place in a corporate setting, so existing companies, but they can also, of course, relate to startup situations where you create your own startup or where you work in a startup. What do we aim to teach you? Well, we would, first of all, want to help you to further develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So to help you think like an entrepreneur. And to do that, we would like to provide you with the latest insights on entrepreneurship and innovation, and also help you to apply those insights in a relatively safe environment, right? Within a university setting, where you can still play with those insights, with the tools and techniques, where there is not that much at stake yet, contrary to where you go and operate in the real world and actually, if you're trying to set up an entrepreneurial venture, there is in general much more at stake than when you do so within the safe university setting. So the insights that we will provide you relate to knowledge, the latest knowledge on entrepreneurship and innovation, but also definitely also relate to tools and techniques that you can apply. And the way we do it is we teach you by means of our own knowledge, so us academics having done research on these topics, but we definitely also have a high involvement of practitioners, so those people that work as innovators and entrepreneurs, and they will be involved in our teaching as well, heavily involved in our teaching as well. So when you have done one of those 3 courses that we offer, we envision that you might follow 3 career paths. So you could go into the path of independent venture creation. So you could actually found your own startup or work as an employee in a startup. You could go into the corporate innovation path. So you could be employed as an entrepreneur or innovator at an established company. Or you could go more into the consulting path where you help others to start, grow, or scale. And we have 3 great alumni here present in this session today as well that will tell you a bit more about their entrepreneurial journey. So some key insights about entrepreneurship. At the University of Melbourne, we of course think that entrepreneurship can be taught. That's why we offer those courses, similar to, for example, that management can be taught. But the way you should do it is you should do it in a very rigorous fashion, but it should also be practical, hands-on, experiential. Furthermore, we think that entrepreneurship can make a difference. And I just provided you some examples of very successful entrepreneurs that have truly made a difference in the world. But it does require resilience on your side and an ability to deal with failure. Before you are going to be successful as an entrepreneur, you will have to deal with a lot of failure. And so you should see entrepreneurship more as a marathon and not a sprint. So it requires of you a more long-term vision. Then what you will see is that for entrepreneurship, collaboration is not an option, but it's essential. And that's also why we have certain types of essays and workshops and assignments where you work together as a group, because it's truly an essential ingredient to become successful. And then entrepreneurship is also all about pivot-mindedness, about being action-oriented, about being willing to test your hypothesis, but then also subsequently, when those hypotheses prove not to be true, then to iterate, to be flexible and to change your direction. And again, that's something we will also try to help you further develop those type of skills. In terms of the curriculum that we offer you in those 3 courses that we offer subjects that build on each other in a logical fashion. As I said, we provide you with the latest knowledge, but also tools and techniques that really help you in that journey. And so if you think about tools and techniques, you can think, for example, about design thinking, which is very much a toolbox being used now in companies such as IBM and 3M, but also used more in new venture creation. Another toolbox that is very useful is the so-called Lean Startup Toolbox, and we will teach you those type of tools and techniques as well. But we also will teach you more theoretical principles, which relates, for example, to effectuation theory. What that is something that I will teach you later on. So in terms of assessment, we don't work with, of course, with multiple choice questions. We work with ways of testing you where you kind of are asked to apply the knowledge that we provide you. So that might mean essays, presentations, open-ended questions. Our mode of teaching, well, we really hope that from semester 2 onwards, this semester, upcoming 2 semester onward, we are able to teach you face-to-face, and the mode of teaching is very interactive. So where will we teach those interactive lectures? Part of the lectures will be here at the spot, and that's the location where the Faculty of Business Economics is located in Berkeley Street. So some subjects will be taught there in the so-called spot, but a lot of the subjects will also be taught at Ormond College, and then specifically the Wade Institute. And you see the Wade Institute here. In the chat, there is a link, and you could click on that link, and then that provides you with a bird's eye view of Ormond College and of the environment of Ormond College and the Wade Institute. And you will see that it's very green and a lovely, inspiring location. So here you see some more pictures of the Wade Institute and inside the teaching spaces. So this is where most of your subjects will take place. So we do collaborate with Wade, and not only in terms of them offering us an inspiring location to teach and to learn, but the Wade Institute also provides the students and the alumni a lot of extracurricular activities that help them further develop as entrepreneurs and innovators. So, for example, examples of activities is for new students, there are going to be onboarding activities to help students get to know each other and to get to know the topic of entrepreneurship. They are very well embedded within the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Victoria, so they can also help you to connect to that entrepreneurial ecosystem. There are these mixers with alumni from the Master of Entrepreneurship. There will be pitch events organized, and Wade, next to helping us deliver the Master of Entrepreneurship, also does other activities in the entrepreneurial space, and you might actually be invited to attend those events as well. And you see here a link to the Wade Institute where you can have a look at what actually they're doing next to providing to help us with the Master of Entrepreneurship. Because of their very well embeddedness within that entrepreneurial ecosystem, they're also able to provide very interesting guest speakers and also help us to find mentors that guide you in your different types of subjects. And there is a dedicated program manager, May, who is your point of departure for everything regarding to Wade Institute. So this is the curriculum. The curriculum is somewhat different depending on what you choose. So if you would choose the graduate certificate, the 50 points, then that would be the first semester, and that consists of 4 courses, 4 subjects that provide you foundational knowledge on entrepreneurship and innovation. If you then consider to do more than just a graduate certificate and want to invest in a Master of Entrepreneurship, you will follow also additional courses in semester 2 and 3. Some of those subjects will be for everybody in the master, but there are also subjects where that are only dedicated to those that have chosen a certain pathway. So in semester 2, you need to choose whether you would like to specialize more in intrapreneurship, so being an entrepreneur within an existing company, or whether you want to specialize more into entrepreneurship, so creating your own new venture. So based on your interests, you can choose one or the other pathway, and you will follow subjects that are dedicated to train you within that pathway. In terms of entry requirements, because these are 3 different types of courses, the entry requirements for the 3 different types of courses also differ. The graduate certificate is that for 50 points course, and that's open to anybody with a bachelor degree, regardless of what type of bachelor degree you have done. There are still some conditions, because you should have a weighted average mark of at least 65, and you should have a proficiency in English of 7.0. And if you don't have a bachelor degree, but you do have 5 years of relevant industry experience, then you are also could also be admitted to this graduate certificate. If you have done the graduate certificate and consider doing the Master of Entrepreneurship, that is possible, provided that you actually meet the requirements of the Master of Entrepreneurship Enhanced. And if we have a look at those criteria then, so for the Master of Entrepreneurship Enhanced, so the 150-point master, we ask for a bachelor degree in a so-called cognate area. So that means business, economics, or similar. Again, there is a weighted average asked for of 65. And English is required on the level of 7.0. If you don't have a bachelor, but you have 6 years of relevant industry experience, you might also be allowed into this Master of Entrepreneurship. Then the last Master of Entrepreneurship, the 100 points, that's the one where we ask the highest criteria. There we ask for a bachelor in a cognate area, so business or economics. Your weighted average should again be at least 65. Or if you have 8 years of relevant industry experience, you might also be allowed in. And your English should again be on the level of 7.0 or higher. So when is the closing date? Well, the closing date for the Master of Entrepreneurship Enhanced and the grad certificate, they close at the 30th of April, upcoming. We might allow some late applications if there are still places available. For the other master, the 100-point master, that only starts early 2023. And that closing date hasn't been determined yet, but that will be somewhere at the end of this year. So here you see some links to the handbooks, the so-called Handbook of the University of Melbourne, where you can find much more information, detailed information about what each of the course entails, about the submission, the entry requirements, and about the different subjects and what those different subjects actually entail in terms of content. So, and with that, I actually would like to end this short presentation about the different courses. And I hand it back to you then, Josephine, sorry.
It was a really insightful presentation, so thank you very much for that. So I think we'll get started on and invite our alumni to join us on screen so we can sort of pose some of those questions that we're getting from the audience. So Rosie, Sangeeta, and Arjun, if you join, and we can probably stop sharing the presentation. Good, yeah, brilliant. And so then I'm sure everyone can look at our crack panel that we've got. So I might sort of just get started with I guess a probably simple question for us all, is maybe a short introduction. So Sangeeta, would you like to start with just a short introduction?
Oh, thanks, Josephine. Hi, everybody. I'm Sangeeta Mulchandani, and I'm the founder of Jumpstart Studio. At Jumpstart Studio, what I do is really help corporate professionals and first-time founders transition into entrepreneurship. So, you know, people who are sitting at their desks and have ideas and want to start something but are fearful of getting into entrepreneurship, I sort of help them transition smoothly into that. I also work with small and medium businesses. I'm a strategy and leadership consultant for them, and I help them sort of adopt some of the entrepreneurial techniques that I've learned at the Masters of Entrepreneurship. And I also mentor and coach startups at multiple universities like Deakin, RMIT, and the Melbourne Business School as well.
Yeah, and Rosie, what about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Josephine. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Rosie Downey, and I was part of the 2016 Master of Entrepreneurship group, so the very first one that went through. Since graduating, I've spent the last 5 years at EY, so Ernst & Young, the accounting and consulting firm. I started off in a role in the strategy and innovation team, so it was a specialised innovation realised team, and this was really geared at helping large corporates explore what the next wave or the future might look like. So exploring different mega trends and learning to adapt to transform their business. More recently, I've transferred into the climate change and sustainability team. So similar vein there in that looking at future mega trends, with the big one being climate change, and helping companies adapt and respond to that. Thank you.
Amazing. And Ash, yourself?
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name's Arjun Agarwal. I'm part of the 5th cohort of the Master of Entrepreneurship that graduated in 2020. Woohoo, what a great year to graduate in. But a bit of an eclectic background. I was born in India, but raised in South Africa, lived there for about 21 years, made my way back to India for a couple of years and ended up in Australia in 2020. My background is in finance and economics, so I have an investment banking and consulting background, but really my passion has always, lied in social impact and empowering young people to not only empower themselves, but also those around them, which is why entrepreneurship was definitely the route I had to take to use all the skills I'd learned in a professional setting and employ them to build something that can make a better future for young people across the world. That has put me on a path to found INAM, where we're reinventing investing to change the world by really making investment literacy and social impact investments from stock markets across the globe accessible for young people. That's me in a nutshell. My startup is obviously part-time, and I work part-time as well to pay the bills until INAM is self-sufficient. So I'm currently working for the federal government of Australia in the strategy branch of the National Disability Insurance Agency, and looking forward to speaking to you all and answering your questions.
Excellent. I might stay with you on this one. So what drew you with to take up study in entrepreneurship in the first place?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a cathartic experience, if you will. Excuse the drama. I've studied drama in the past. So I was actually working in investment banking in India for around 2 years. And I learned a lot, worked with veterans. I had transitioned from a stage in my life where, we pretty much lost everything. I'd lost my father, we'd lost a whole lot of money, and I was living alone with my mother. I started working and I got a roof over my head. I had food to eat. Everything was looking on the up. And during this time, I helped the bank I was with called Investec, start their own impact initiative, their own corporate social responsibility division. And what I realized was I had all these things, but the one thing I didn't have, and the one thing I loved doing most, was helping other people. And I wasn't doing it, which is what led me to start their CSR branch. And after I ran a couple campaigns of, helping students from underprivileged backgrounds with sports kits and cancer victim survivors, I realized that, this is what an entity can do in its corporate social limits. At the end of the day, it's a business that has other motives. I wanted to learn how to marry the two together and how to really take a business that could make a profit, earn a revenue, but also make sure that it's benefiting society. And I knew the only way to really do that was through entrepreneurship. And whilst there's, great books out there and things that you can do on your own, everything is very unstructured. So you really need a structured approach to learn entrepreneurship, to understand entrepreneurship. And I felt that that's what, a master in entrepreneurship would afford me. I didn't want to do an MBA or a master's in finance. Quite frankly, they're boring. No offense to all those that do them and enjoy them, but it's a very different mindset and it's a very different approach to learning about conducting a business that could one day make a difference to society. So yeah, that's what drew me towards studying a Master of Entrepreneurship.
Sounds amazing. And I mean, we do have a wonderful Master of Finance. So maybe if you'd seen that, it would be different. Rosie, what about yourself?
Yeah, hard act to follow. That was a lovely and inspiring story. I enjoyed listening to that. Look, a similar vein in the sense that what really attracted me to the entrepreneurship degree was the ability to, the purpose-driven nature of it. So as I've said, starting a business is a really effective way to make that meaningful social and environmental change. And so that's what really drew me to the course, and just about solving real world problems. So as I mentioned before, I'm probably more in that entrepreneurship bucket now, being at EY. And the reason that I kind of made that change rather than going ahead with my own business was because, well, a number of reasons. The first was probably the scale. So I could bring that passion and bring those learnings, but applying that in an existing organisation meant that the reach and the resources behind you were already there, which is always a bonus. And secondly, just to be within an organisation where there is leadership and mentorship, which of course stems from the Masters as well. There's that opportunity to connect with mentors as well.
And Sanjita, anything else you'd like to add?
I think it'll follow in the same way, but my story is a bit different because, I'm a third generation entrepreneur. My grandparents are entrepreneurs, my parents are entrepreneurs, and I grew up in India learning business pretty much at the kitchen table. But when I started my career, I started off in the corporate sector. I worked with airlines, I worked in the energy sector, I worked at EY for a bit, and I also worked at ANZ Bank for a long, long time. And so I spent 14 years of my life climbing the corporate ladder and really being successful at doing that. But I hit a ceiling. I hit a point where I just wanted something more meaningful in my life. And I suppose in the back of my head, business was always something I knew I was going to end up doing one day. And it came to a point where I asked myself, what am I waiting for? But I found myself in Australia at that point, right? And because I'd seen business being done in India and just being done in many years ago, it really was, it was daunting for me to start something of my own. I really didn't know how to start, where to begin. And I suppose that's why I chose to do the Masters of Entrepreneurship and study it, because the world has changed so much since my parents started their businesses, right? So I think for me, that's really what I was looking for, is learning how to do business in this day and age and how to do it right in the country that I was in. And I think that's the biggest reason I did this course.
Excellent. So Gerda, what sort of attracted you to study? And I guess probably something a little bit different for you is then going to teaching something like entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so my story is that I have always been interested in innovation within corporate settings. So that is something that I have been studying since I was a PhD student, a very, very long time ago. And I kind of transitioned into the entrepreneurship space because you saw that large corporates often have difficulty to innovate, right? Particularly innovate in a way that makes them to transform into something totally different. And the way in which corporates try to do that is, for example, to buy into small entrepreneurial firms, right? So they either go into an alliance with small entrepreneurial firm or they buy it. They simply buy it. So there is a lot to learn from what those small entrepreneurial firms are doing. And that was something I was intrigued by. And so that brought me into, okay, if large corporates actually look at to become more entrepreneurial by actually looking at what small firms are doing, right? What the small ventures are doing, I should know more about that. And so that was my journey into that space.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess probably another thing I sort of want to touch on is, I guess, how did studying entrepreneurship sort of really prepare you for the realities of then working in entrepreneurship? I might start again with you, Rosie. So, sort of how was the, I guess, the course, how did it prepare you for that real world setting?
Yeah, thanks, Josephine. I think a lot of what I loved about the course was the fact that you'd learn the theory within the classroom setting in quite an interactive way, but then you'd apply it in a practical way. So you were running your startup alongside the theory and you could directly apply what you learned within that setting. You could test and you could try and you could fail and you could get feedback, all those things. So specifically the design thinking and the human-centered design aspects of the course were two particular subjects that were offered, as well as a general business acumen course, which was handy for me coming from a science background. But those particularly are really relevant in the current corporate world and when trying to push that entrepreneurship agenda. So it's been on the scene, I suppose, within that setting for a number of years, but definitely gaining momentum, particularly recently. And I think what empowered me through doing the course was that I really learnt the depths of those concepts like design thinking and human-centered design, because in a corporate setting, that kind of thing can potentially be thrown around as a bit of a buzzword or just a kind of more of a marketing thing than used in the right way. So I think the course really equipped me with those, the deep knowledge within those topics that were directly applicable to the work that I was doing with clients who were trying to innovate.
Yeah, and so Sanjita, I saw a lot of nodding there, so there's probably a bit you agree with there, but any thoughts?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur before I knew it, in my corporate roles. So coming and studying entrepreneurship was really interesting because I could relate back to so many things I used to do in the corporate, realm of things. But the one thing I suppose that really was the biggest learning for me out of this course was really the mindset shift. When you're in a corporate setting, it's quite easy to build yourself a set of network and, sort of work through that network most of the time. But when you come into entrepreneurship, you're dealing with customers on the ground. And so, one of the things that we talk about a lot in entrepreneurship is get out of the building, which is, really just getting out there, talking to customers on the street and doing interviews with strangers and, just getting comfortable with things like that. And I suppose that was probably the first thing that hit me in the first project that we had to do as well. So, and because it's such a hands-on course with a lot of practical tools and a lot of practical doing in the course, I think it teaches you so much and so rapidly too. So I think for me, the mindset shift was the biggest piece.
And Arjun, any other thoughts on that? To say something that's very 2022, you're on mute.
Aha!
There we go.
Someone had to be on mute.
We're all just glad that you did it before us.
No, I think I agree with Rosie and Sangeeta completely. Two of my biggest takeaways were done is better than perfect. You can't see my finger. I'm holding up a finger because of the virtual background, but done is better than perfect. And, the second thing is, honing in on what the problem really is, because a lot of times people have phenomenal ideas, and I can guarantee you everyone has had $1 million or even $1 billion idea in their life. The difference between those that succeed at implementing them is not only execution, but also understanding, is there an inherent problem that you're solving? And to test that out, you need to go in and say, okay, cool, let me put something out there that'll validate this problem. And being able to take those things away from this course and apply it in a real life scenario where, you don't need all the money in the world to start a business. You can start it off with, sending an email to 20 people, but really honing in on understanding what a problem is and whether the problem is worth solving, and then going out and doing something about that. Whether or not it's perfect is a secondary issue. Going out and actually doing something to make it happen is what really sets success for entrepreneurs aside from those that want to do something but aren't able to. So I think for me it was very important to learn those things and to then go and apply them, because you figure out who to talk to, how to talk to people, and how to really hone in on what you're doing. So yeah.
Really interesting. Now, Sangeeta, you're sort of working in both Australia and in India. How are you finding the differences in the entrepreneurship environment in those two very different countries?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I'm in India at the moment, actually, and being here and seeing that, and because Australia has been shut for the last 2 years, it was really hard to get out of there and actually be on ground and see the Indian startup ecosystem. But now that I'm getting the chance to do that and speaking with a lot of startup founders here as well, the massive difference that I sort of observe is, one is just the rapid scale with which things work in India, and it could be a function of really the population, right? 1.3 billion people. That the speed at which things happen in different parts and different pockets of the country is exciting. In Australia, you still see a lot of the concentration in the larger cities, whereas in India, they're starting to seep through into the villages. They're starting to seep through into the smaller, tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities and things like that. So that's one big difference that I can see. The other also is it's a bit unstructured in India, though. Like I feel like the support system that you have in Australia in the startup ecosystem is a bit more structured. There's a lot more investment starting to happen in the startup space in both countries, but just the way it's structured and the way things are flowing, it's a lot more structured. This is what I would say. Like, it's just easier to get things done in Australia. In India, there's a lot more hurdles for the startup ecosystem and the startups to cross and the founders to sort of deal with. Having said that, India has, in the last few years, the total number of unicorns, these are startups that are valued at over $1 billion, has 81 startups, 81 unicorns, and, Australia is at 6 or 7 at the moment. So, and again, that could be a function of the sheer population of the country and just, the fact that there's so much going on, but also external investment. There's a lot of external investment focused on India at the moment. And, a lot of them are starting to look at startups as forms of investment. So there's a few differences there, but I think overall, both countries are really in a similar space when compared to, say, Silicon Valley. Because they're starting to both be in that space where startups are getting recognized, startups are getting support, startups are getting a lot of, people want to start startups. So I think it's a really good space to be in. The next 10 years, you've got to watch these two countries because it's the place to be.
It's good to hear. So Arjun, you've sort of come from an investment background and now you're sort of really focusing on financial literacy in young people. You've touched on it a little bit, but can we get focus a bit more on that journey?
Of course. So the reason I went into investment banking a bunch of years ago and wanted to pursue it with so much passion, as you will, was not because I wanted to become the Wolf of Wall Street or Harvey Specter, as we all know in all these amazing, series that we've become accustomed to. I had this little inkling that investment banking was just an incredibly jargonized world, which was overcomplicating money go in, money go out. And if I were to prove this inkling right, I'd have to be in the thick of it. I'd have to understand it, and I'd have to really fully grasp that entire supply chain of banking and financial services. So I got into it through various different avenues. And when I got there and spent time with some of the world's leading institutions in financial services, I was both happy and sad to realize that my inkling was actually correct. There were incredibly simple things happening in the background and on the ground, but they were overcomplicated with, big words, 100-page agreements, lots of lawyers charging absurd amounts of money for basically instructing someone to transfer X amount of money from location A or bank account A to bank account B with various different terms. Sangeeta's obviously been in corporate advisory, so she's going to hate what I'm saying. But at the crux of it, yes, they're very complicated agreements, but the founding principles don't change. And they're overcomplicated by people who have had access to that knowledge and to those networks and to those learnings and those kinds of transactions and deals. Now, when I learned this, as I said, I was happy and sad. Happy because, hey, I'm right. Sad because, oh shit, apologies for the French, but this needs to change. People need to have access to, this kind of information, to this knowledge, because it is that lack or that gap in knowledge that keeps people away from being able to be as successful as the select few might or might not become. So that's what kind of got me into thinking, what if we could make this jargonized world accessible for young people? Because it takes a long time for young people to leave the education system, to then go into the workplace, to learn skills on the job, and then think about investing and their own financial well-being and their family's financial well-being and the future of their family. And having a very, tragic personal experience with what happens when you don't have access to adequate financial literacy, I knew that I wouldn't want to let any other family go through something like what my family had gone through, which is why I was like, okay, this is what we've got to do. We've got to make young people informed. We've got to empower them with the knowledge. We've got to give them and uncomplicate this world, which is seemingly so strange, into simplified words that people can understand and action to make a better future for themselves. So yeah, that's what got me into financial literacy from investment banking.
It's fascinating. So, Rosie, I might throw to you on this one. We're really lucky in that we've got a really strong community amongst our graduates and alumni community for the Master of Entrepreneurship. And so, how have you found this network has helped since graduating?
Yeah, the strong community is probably one of the biggest strengths of the program itself, and there's kind of a few layers to that. So, at the very core, there's your cohort group, which is usually a group of completely diverse individuals with diverse backgrounds, but also diverse skill sets and interests. So that within itself is incredibly privileged position to be in. So I found in the last 5 years since graduating, whether I'm working on a client problem or I've got my own entrepreneurial idea on the side, or I need to do something in regards to business in some other aspect, I'll reach out to that cohort. And whether it's, to help build a website or to advise me on how blockchain works or numerous things. So there's that core group, which is really special. Beyond that, there's also the mentors and the teachers that you encounter within the program itself, who are also a diverse and interesting and really inspiring bunch of people. So I've stayed in contact with a couple of the mentors from the group from 5 years ago, and they've kind of helped me navigate different career paths. And thirdly, there's the alumni itself, which I've found, I suppose, being the first group that has come through the course. I'm usually, that's a really important group as well. And I've actually use that position to, you know, assist recent graduates with working out what they might like to do next and helping them connect into that entrepreneurship world. And then beyond that, there were constantly talks and events and different programs that went on throughout the year that participating in were obviously hugely valuable. And yeah, it just gives you it puts you in a really good position where you know that it just feels as though most things are accessible to you. You know that it's only 1 or 2 degrees of separation to be able to track down the person or the information or the support that you need at the time. So yeah, definitely a community aspect is a really strong part of the program, and that, yeah, I'm very grateful for.
That's good. There was, again, I saw a lot of nodding from the other panelists, so that's always a good sign. I thought I'd probably check in with Gerda on this. Is that, I guess, from your point of view as part of obviously the teaching staff in that network, how do you find sort of the teaching staff and for the Master of Entrepreneurship sort of feed into that network as well?
Well, you know, so the extracurricular activities for the students and for the alumni is something that the way the Institute has taken on to organize. And of course, those events will also be attended by us, right? By us teaching staff. And we track, of course, the alumni ourselves as well. And there is often, you know, we might also ask them, as we do now, for activities, right, that we do, like this is, you know, to explain to potential future students what they can expect. But, you know, we might also invite them for guest lectures, right, in our subjects. And another thing is that, you know, ultimately, you might do some projects maybe together in terms of research. So there is I think for both sides, there is a strong benefit to keep in contact with each other and to kind of exchange what we are up to and to actually cultivate the alumni network, because it's a benefit for the alumni and it's a benefit for us. And yeah, that we actively try to keep it closely knit as possible.
Yeah, it is, I'm sure, an important part of the university experience for everyone. Now, I could stay here all night chatting about entrepreneurship, but we probably need to round it up just in the next couple of minutes. So I might see if there's any last thoughts from the panel. So Sangeeta, I might just check in with you if you've got any wise words for anyone in the audience that might be considering coming and studying with us.
I think I'll just say, I'll sum it up in one sentence. It's totally going to be worth your while. I think doing this course has really changed my trajectory and my career direction, and I enjoy it so much now. You know, and I think a lot of times, like even just last week, I had somebody asking me, you know, a student who's coming out of finishing their course asking me, hey, Sangeeta, should I go work in a startup or should I go work in a corporate company? And, you know, it's always a hard decision to make, because obviously when you're working in a startup, you're doing multiple roles altogether. But really, the startup space is very, very exciting at this point in time. And if you want to sort of get your foot in the door, if you want to get started and, you know, just get a head start in the space, the Masters of Entrepreneurship is definitely a course I would recommend you do.
Thank you. Arjun?
Yeah, I'm going to stick to the words I've stuck by my whole life that have given me a lot of comfort. That by my role model, his name's Steve Jobs. You might know him if you use a Mac. If you don't, please Google him. He always used to say that, you know, we're all here to make a dent in the universe, else why even be here? And I can say from the bottom of my heart, this master's is probably your chance at making that dent. So definitely, you know, do something about those little inklings you've had your whole life and you know, change the world. So yeah.
Why not? Rosie?
Yeah, I'll totally echo those thoughts. I think the biggest thing is that the course enables you to be a master of your own destiny. So you don't have to fit into a preconceived cookie cutter job that's there that you have to apply to and go in this race where you're competing against a lot of others. It really is an opportunity to shape the life and the job and the career that you want. So yeah, I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
Excellent. And Gerda, any last words for our audience?
I just want to thank everybody who has joined us online. I would really like to thank the alumni for their presence and their great insights. And any questions that you might have in terms of content, happy to answer those. And they will be directed to me. Yeah, so I actually hope I will see you either in semester 2 or in semester 1, 2023, face-to-face interactive. Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. And thank you to the panel again for joining us. It was a really insightful presentation. And thank you to the audience for joining us. Just a reminder that you can make an appointment, whether we can arrange something for you to have a discussion with Gerda or with our recruitment team. You can make that appointment online. There's some information in the chat. But thank you all again and enjoy the rest of your evening.